From the very beginning of human civilization, there's been an eerie sense that history does not unfold at random. That perhaps beneath the rise and fall of empires, beneath the glory of kings and the suffering of the common man, something deeper moves, an invisible rhythm guiding all things toward an unseen destination. The narrator's voice emerges slowly, almost like a whisper. What if every empire that ever existed, every revolution, every downfall, was simply playing its part in a story written long before time began? We begin in ancient Mesopotamia, where clay tablets recorded the destinies of kings as decreed by the gods. The priests of Babylon did not believe in coincidence. They believed in order, in cycles, in divine architecture. The stars were not mere ornaments in the night sky. They were the script of creation itself. Each movement of the heavens dictated when kings should rise and when they must fall. The same belief echoed in Egypt, where pharaohs aligned their tombs and temples with the stars of Orion, convinced that celestial geometry itself dictated their afterlife and reign. It was as if the ancients knew something that modern humanity has forgotten, that history is not chaos, but choreography. The camera glides through time. Rome burns, yet the ashes form a pattern. Constantinople falls, yet its knowledge resurfaces in another form, as though guided by a hidden current. The narrator continues, "It is as if history breathes, inhaling empires, exhaling ruins, repeating the same prophecy under different names. Every collapse paves the way for rebirth, and every rebirth carries the seed of collapse. The wheel turns endlessly, and those who understand its rhythm can predict, or perhaps even command, the future." We transition to a darkened library, shelves stretching into infinity. Ancient manuscripts lie scattered, the Book of Daniel, the Sibylline oracles, the fragments of Enoch. Each text whispers the same message in different tongues. History has a pattern, and those who learn to read it can control it. The narrator muses, were these prophets truly seeing the future, or were they simply decoding a script already embedded in time? The perspective shifts to the modern world, skyscrapers gleaming, stock markets pulsing, armies moving with precision. Yet the same invisible design seems to persist. Crises emerge with uncanny timing, like the repeating refrain of a cosmic song. Nations rise not by chance, but seemingly on schedule. Wars break out following celestial cycles known only to a few. In the quiet corridors of power, leaders consult not only economists and generals, but astrologers, mystics, and data analysts, the new interpreters of prophecy. The narrator's tone deepens. Maybe prophecy isn't about predicting what will happen. Maybe it's about ensuring that it does. A chilling thought settles, that the future might not be waiting to unfold, but rather being carefully directed by forces who understand the code of time itself. From the mystery schools of ancient Egypt to secret societies in Renaissance Europe, and now to the algorithmic prophecies of artificial intelligence, humanity has always sought to seize control of the script. But what if the script controls us? As the sequence unfolds, we are shown how even our myths seem to mirror one another. The flood of Noah, the deluge of Gilgamesh, the cataclysm of Atlantis. Each speaks of destruction followed by renewal. Each era ends with a purification, as though the cosmos itself demands a reset. Historians call it coincidence. The wise call it prophecy. The scene fades to black as the narrator delivers the section's haunting final words. History is not written by the victors. It is written by something far older, something that waits behind the curtain, pulling the strings while we dance in the light. The question is not whether we have free will, but whether we have ever had it all. A deep ambient tone hums in the background. The viewer is left suspended between awe and unease, staring into the unseen architecture of time, wondering who, or what, authored the hidden script beneath it all. Across every civilization, in every corner of the world, there have always been those who claim to see beyond the veil of time. From the cryptic murmurs of ancient oracles to the meticulously written predictions of medieval seers, Prophecy has shaped the fate of nations and the ambitions of kings. But behind these prophecies, there lies a darker question. Were these visions truly divine revelations, or were they tools carefully crafted by those who understood the psychology of belief and the machinery of power? The story begins in ancient Greece. The Oracle of Delphi sits shrouded in smoke, inhaling vapors that send her mind spiraling into trance. Her words, half-whispered and often ambiguous, decide the fates of armies. Kings and generals travel vast distances to hear her counsel. Yet behind her, unseen by the pilgrims, stand the priests, interpreting her words, shaping them, bending them to political ends. The prophecies of Delphi were never random. They were instruments, guiding Greece through wars, alliances, and expansions. The narrator's voice echoes. The divine voice spoke through her, but whose hand wrote the script she read from? We move eastward to the deserts of Babylon, where astrologer priests studied the heavens not merely to understand the gods, but to predict the pulse of power itself. They believed that every empire corresponded to a celestial age, and that when one constellation ascended, its earthly counterpart would rise with it. The rise of Cyrus the Great, they said, was written in the stars long before his birth. His empire's victories seemed foretold by heavenly alignments. But again, the question lingers. Did Cyrus conquer because prophecy said he would, or did prophecy inspire men to make it so? Centuries later, the Roman Empire would employ its own interpreters of destiny, the Sibylline seers. Hidden within guarded vaults, their scrolls were consulted whenever the state faced crisis. Earthquakes, rebellions, strange omens in the sky, all demanded prophetic interpretation. Yet the Senate often revealed only fragments of these prophecies to the public. By choosing which verses to share, they controlled the narrative, shaping the collective mind of Rome through selective revelation. Prophecy, once divine, had become a political weapon. The tone darkens as the narration crosses into the Middle Ages. Europe becomes a cauldron of mystics and visionaries. Hildegard of Bingen, Joachim of Fleury, and countless others whose words ignited fear or hope in entire populations. Monarchs commissioned astrologers to legitimize their rule. Wars were launched because seers proclaimed divine destiny. Even the Crusades, some chroniclers suggest, were fueled by apocalyptic visions that promised salvation through bloodshed. In royal courts, prophecies became blueprints for expansion. Behind every chosen ruler, there stood a prophet whispering in their ear, blending theology and strategy into one. Then comes Nostradamus, the name that still echoes through centuries. His cryptic quatrains have been linked to the rise of Napoleon, the fall of Hitler, the Great Fire of London, and the assassination of kings. But beneath the veil of mystery lies a man deeply connected to secret networks of scholars, physicians, and occultists. His writings circulated among the elite long before they reached the masses. Each quatrain, seemingly vague, could be interpreted or weaponized by those who sought to justify their ambitions. Was Nostradamus a prophet, the narrator asks, or an architect of belief, using prophecy to give the illusion of destiny? The narrative expands beyond Europe. In the Middle East, Sufi mystics spoke of cosmic cycles, the rise of just rulers and the fall of tyrants, each part of divine mathematics. In China, imperial astrologers calculated the mandate of heaven through eclipses and comet trails. The emperor's legitimacy depended not on votes, but on celestial approval. In every case, prophecy was not merely prediction. It was governance through myth. Those who understood how to frame the future held the keys to obedience. But what if these visions were not spontaneous? What if they were part of a system, a network of coded communications passed secretly between orders, religions, and empires? The voice grows colder, more deliberate. Perhaps the prophets of power were not dreamers lost in visions, it says. Perhaps they were engineers, shaping human history one revelation at a time. The camera pans across centuries of art, paintings of angels whispering into the ears of kings, manuscripts illuminated with golden eyes, secret symbols etched into the margins of sacred texts. These were not mere decorations. They were signals, clues, instructions for those who could read them. Prophecy became a language of control, its symbols traded among the initiated like currency. We see the continuity, from the oracle's smoke to the astrologer's star chart, from the medieval seer's parchment to the classified intelligence briefings of modern governments. The methods evolve, but the principle remains. Whoever controls the vision of the future controls the behavior of the present. Prophets have always been close to power because belief is power. As the music fades, the narrator delivers a chilling reflection. The prophets of old claimed to speak for the divine. But perhaps the true divinity they served was the system itself, the invisible machine of history that rewards those who can convince others that fate is inevitable. The camera lingers on a candle burning low beside an ancient manuscript, the flame flickering like the fragile boundary between revelation and manipulation. The final line settles like a whisper through time. Prophecy was never about seeing the future. It was about writing it and making sure the world obeyed.
Long before organized religion drew its boundaries and decided which texts were sacred and which were heresy, there existed a mysterious scripture, a book whispered about by ancient mystics and feared by theologians, the Book of Enoch. It was said to contain forbidden knowledge, revelations about the origins of humanity, the architecture of the heavens, and the unseen beings who shaped both. For centuries, the Church sought to erase it, to hide its words in darkness. Yet somehow, fragments survived, scattered across Ethiopia, Egypt, and the Dead Sea, waiting for those bold enough to read what the gods never meant for mankind to see. The narrator's tone is soft but unsettling, the kind that feels like a secret being confessed. Before Genesis, before Revelation, the voice begins, "There was Enoch, the man who walked with God and was taken into the heavens alive." But what did he see there that frightened the world's rulers so deeply? In the Book of Enoch, the heavens are not silent. They are alive with watchers, powerful entities who descended to earth, intermingling with humankind, teaching forbidden arts. These were not angels of light, but architects of civilization. They revealed astronomy, metallurgy, medicine, and warcraft. To ancient eyes, this knowledge was divine. To those who governed the people, it was dangerous. For if men could command the secrets of the stars, who would need kings or priests to interpret them? Thus began a centuries-long effort to suppress Enoch's revelations. The scene transitions to the dusty deserts near Qumran, where fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. Among them, scholars found references to Enoch, his name half erased, his teachings buried beneath centuries of silence. The narrator observes, "It is as though every age has tried to bury Enoch, and yet he always returns. Like the truth itself, indestructible, inconvenient, uninvited." According to these forbidden texts, humanity's destiny was not entirely its own. The Watchers, or Grigori, manipulated events, guiding early civilizations toward knowledge and destruction alike. Floods, wars, empires, all part of a cosmic cycle designed to reset creation whenever mankind drew too close to forbidden power. The parallels to later myths are striking: the fall of Atlantis, the wrath of the gods, the biblical deluge. Could it be that all these stories stemmed from a single suppressed source, a lost record of humanity's first rebellion against its makers? We move through candlelit monasteries of the early Christian era. Scholars copy texts by hand, each stroke of ink preserving one truth while omitting another. Church fathers debate which scriptures to include in the canon. Enoch's book is deemed too dangerous, its ideas too alien, its cosmology too vast. It speaks of multiple heavens, of hierarchies of angels, of cosmic rulers unseen by man. It describes a divine court where even the angels themselves are judged. To include such a vision, the narrator whispers, would have shattered the foundations of simple faith. It revealed too much, that the heavens are not one kingdom but many, and not all serve the same master. As centuries pass, Enoch's teachings resurface among the mystics and alchemists of medieval Europe. The Kabbalists interpret fragments of his visions as maps of divine geometry, blueprints for understanding creation. The Freemasons, centuries later, embed Enochian symbolism into their rituals, referencing the lost pillars of Enoch, said to contain all the wisdom of the pre-flood world. Each secret society that emerges seems to claim a piece of his legacy, each interpreting it as a manual for transcending the human condition. The camera shifts to John D., Elizabeth I's astrologer and magician. He claims to receive messages from angelic beings in a language he calls Enochian, the language of creation itself. These journals describe complex geometric sigils, grids, and alphabets, all designed to communicate with the higher intelligences that once guided mankind. Whether D truly made contact or simply decoded fragments of an ancient system, the effect was the same. Enoch's forbidden knowledge had returned, now cloaked in Renaissance science and magic. But why would secret orders and mystics risk everything to preserve these teachings? The narrator answers in a low, deliberate tone, because they believed Enoch's story was not myth, it was history. That the Watchers never left. That they still whisper into the minds of those who rule, those who build, those who dream. The chilling implication is that Enoch's visions were not allegory, but memory, a record of humanity's earliest contact with powers beyond comprehension. We see visual montages, Sumerian reliefs of winged beings descending from the sky, Egyptian carvings of star maps, Mesoamerican codices depicting celestial teachers. The patterns repeat across continents and millennia, as though all cultures were recalling the same ancient visitation. Different names, the narrator says, same story. The Watchers, the gods, the Shining Ones, fragments of one forbidden chronicle hidden across the earth. The tension deepens as the film contrasts these revelations with the Church's centuries-long silence. Even today, the Vatican holds apocryphal manuscripts locked away, documents that may contain lost sections of Enoch's writings. Some researchers claim the reason is simple. Enoch's worldview undermines the concept of divine monopoly. It suggests multiple layers of cosmic governance, some benevolent, others predatory. If accepted, such an idea would dismantle the religious power structures that have guided humanity for 2,000 years. The narrator's voice drops to a near whisper. Perhaps this is why Enoch had to disappear, not because he lied, but because he told too much truth. The Forbidden Chronicle exposes a system where prophecy, control, and cosmic hierarchy intertwine. The Watchers were not merely observing history, they were writing it. As the music swells, the narrator concludes, every time Enoch's words resurface, the world changes. His book inspired prophets, guided mystics, and terrified empires. And though his name has been erased, his influence remains, hidden in symbols, encrypted in architecture, whispered in rituals. To understand Enoch is to see the scaffolding of history itself, and the unseen hands still holding it upright. The final image fades into an ancient stone tablet inscribed with unknown symbols. As the camera zooms closer, the marks begin to glow faintly, like stars forming constellations, as if the heavens themselves were speaking again through the dust of forgotten prophecy.
Throughout the corridors of human history, those who sought to preserve forbidden truths learned to speak in silence, in symbols, geometry, and hidden patterns. When knowledge became dangerous, when books were burned and visionaries were silenced, the enlightened did not stop writing. They simply changed the language. Their new script could not be censored because it was hidden in plain sight. Carved in a stone, woven into cathedrals, measured into temples, and painted onto the very ceilings of holy places. This was the secret language of prophecy, the coded architecture of destiny, used by initiates to mark the path of empires and the rhythm of ages. The narrator's voice begins softly, echoing over images of ancient monuments. If words can be destroyed, symbols endure. For symbols speak to the subconscious, the realm of gods, dreams, and prophecy. We begin in ancient Egypt, where geometry was sacred and architecture was prayer. The pyramids of Giza align not randomly, but precisely with the belt of Orion, the same stars that ancient myths say mark the home of the gods. Each pyramid's angle, each dimension, each stone corresponds to a mathematical frequency, a cosmic code. To the initiated, these were not tombs, but time capsules, physical prophecies built to outlast the decay of language. Within their geometric perfection, the pharaohs inscribed not just their reign, but their resurrection, an eternal return mapped in numbers and light. As the scene unfolds, the voice continues. Every civilization that remembered the stars understood that geometry was more than design. It was destiny made visible. The narration moves to Greece, where philosophers like Pythagoras and Plato treated numbers as living beings, entities with soul and consciousness. Pythagoras taught that harmony in music reflected harmony in the cosmos, and that the intervals between notes mirrored the distances between planets. To him, prophecy was mathematics expressed as melody. His followers encoded this belief into architecture, temples built upon ratios of divine proportion, where sound, light, and vibration formed gateways to transcendence. When one walked into such a space, the geometry itself altered thought, guiding consciousness toward revelation. From Greece, the journey travels north and west into medieval Europe. The Gothic cathedrals rise like frozen symphonies, their spires reaching for heaven. The stained glass glows with coded messages, roses, stars, and labyrinths representing the path of the soul through time. The great cathedrals of Chartres and Notre Dame were not only places of worship, they were compendiums of prophecy built in stone. Their architects were initiated into the secrets of sacred geometry, a lineage tracing back to ancient Egypt, preserved by the Templars and later the Freemasons. Inside these cathedrals, light itself becomes a messenger. At specific times of year, sunlight passes through certain windows, illuminating hidden carvings or symbols, moments when divine timing and human design converge. These were celestial signatures, reminders that prophecy could be measured, not imagined. To the ordinary pilgrim, they were miracles. To the builders, they were equations. The camera drifts over ancient manuscripts, tracing lines of golden ink shaped into spirals, eyes, and interlocking circles. The narrator whispers, every curve, every ratio, every intersection hides meaning. To the untrained eye, decoration. To the initiate, revelation. We travel east to India and Tibet, where mandalas and yantras express the same universal language. Their geometric precision mirrors the movements of galaxies, the cycles of reincarnation, the rhythm of creation itself. The ancients did not separate art from astronomy, nor prophecy from mathematics. They believed that by aligning earthly forms with cosmic order, one could glimpse the blueprint of destiny. The narrative slows, the tone deepens. But geometry is only one dialect of prophecy's hidden tone. The other is number, the secret alphabet of time. Here the story turns to numerology, a system that runs like a current through all mystical traditions. The Pythagoreans, Kabbalists, and Arab scholars all taught that numbers were not human inventions, but divine principles, each vibrating with intention. 7 for creation, 12 for cosmic order, 33 for enlightenment. These numbers recur across history, embedded in architecture, scripture, and ritual. We see how the number 13, feared by many, actually represents transformation, the death of one cycle and the birth of another. The narrator points out that great revolutions, wars, and discoveries often align with these symbolic numbers, as though the events were following an ancient schedule known only to the few who could read the code. The narration shifts to modern times. Corporate logos, national emblems, even city layouts echo ancient geometry. Washington, D.C.'s streets form Masonic symbols. The Great Seal of the United States carries the all-seeing eye above an unfinished pyramid. The narrator asks, are these coincidences of design or the continuation of an ancient conversation? The same geometric precision appears in the world's stock exchanges, where financial cycles mirror planetary ones. a digital form of prophecy expressed in numbers and algorithms. Just as the ancients tracked eclipses to foresee the fate of kings, today's economists and technocrats use data patterns to predict the rise and fall of nations. The tools have changed, the intent has not. Humanity still seeks to read the secret script beneath time. We are then shown esoteric manuscripts, Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, the Tree of Life, and the Fibonacci Spiral, all echoing the same divine ratio. The narrator's voice rises with quiet awe. Everywhere, the same geometry appears. From the spiral of a galaxy to the spiral of a seashell, the design repeats. Is this coincidence? Or is creation itself the prophecy, repeating its own shape again and again, reminding us that all things are bound by one pattern? The tone shifts darker now, as the camera pans across crumbling cathedrals and lost temples. But those who spoke this language were hunted, the narrator says, because to understand the pattern is to predict power, and to predict power is to threaten it. The church condemned the geomancers, the mystics, the architects of hidden knowledge. Yet even in persecution, the symbols endured, etched into coins, manuscripts, and the blueprints of every empire. As the section nears its end, the voice grows solemn. The secret language of prophecy was never about predicting the future in words. It was about designing the world so that the prophecy would fulfill itself. In that sense, the builders of temples were not only architects, they were authors of time, embedding divine mathematics into human consciousness. The final images show constellations overlaying cities, star maps matching the placement of temples and monuments. The earth below mirrors the sky above, a reflection of prophecy written both in heaven and on stone. The narrator delivers the closing line in a haunting tone. Look closely at the world around you, its symbols, its architecture, its numbers. The message has always been there waiting. The question is not whether you can see it, but whether you were ever meant to.
When the flames of Alexandria consumed the wisdom of ages, the world entered what many historians call the darkness, a period when knowledge retreated from the light of public life and found sanctuary in secret. Yet darkness is never total. What seems lost often survives in disguise, carried by those who refuse to let the torch die. And so, while the world mourned the burning of the great library, a quieter story was unfolding, one of survival, migration, and the birth of hidden brotherhoods dedicated to guarding what the flames could not destroy. According to several esoteric traditions, not all the scrolls of Alexandria perished. Some were spirited away long before the fires ever reached them. Ancient priests, scribes, and philosophers, foreseeing the coming collapse, formed small, secret networks to preserve fragments of their sacred sciences. These men and women understood the cyclical nature of time and civilization. They knew that every age of enlightenment is followed by an age of darkness, and that survival depended not on open defiance, but on concealment. So, they hid what they knew in coded texts, encrypted symbols, and rituals that only the initiated could decipher. Where did this hidden knowledge go? The trail is faint but traceable. After the fall of Alexandria, many scholars fled east, into Persia, Arabia, and India, where ancient wisdom was still respected. Others traveled south into Nubia and across the Red Sea to the Arabian Peninsula. But the most intriguing migration seems to have followed the old trade routes through the Sinai and into the deserts of Judea, where small sects began to emerge, blending Egyptian mysticism with emerging monotheistic traditions. These exiled keepers of wisdom became the bridge between the ancient world and the spiritual philosophies that shaped the centuries to come. In Arabia, their teachings merged with older Hermetic and alchemical traditions. The scholars of Baghdad's House of Wisdom, established nearly 1,000 years later, were not creating knowledge from nothing, they were recovering it. Translations of lost Greek, Egyptian, and Persian texts reappeared mysteriously, often written by anonymous sources or under cryptic names. Could these have been the descendants of Alexandria's last scholars, preserving what had once been hidden in the shadows? Many researchers suspect so. Meanwhile, in Europe, another current was forming. Refugee philosophers and priests carried fragments of ancient wisdom into the Mediterranean islands, eventually reaching southern Italy and Greece. From there, the teachings spread quietly into the mystery schools that would later influence the Pythagoreans, the Gnostics, and the Neoplatonists. Each of these groups encoded their beliefs in symbols and allegories, geometric patterns, sacred ratios, and myths, to protect the truth from persecution. What could not be spoken openly was whispered through mathematics and myth, art, and architecture. One particularly fascinating thread connects these migrating sages to the early foundations of the esoteric orders that later emerged in medieval Europe. The symbols used by the builders of Gothic cathedrals, the all-seeing eye, the rose, the compass, and square, are echoes of older Egyptian emblems representing divine order and cosmic harmony. These were not random designs but philosophical codes. They expressed the same truths once taught in Alexandria's grand halls, truths about the relationship between humanity, the stars, and the divine geometry that structures all creation. But even beyond architecture, the migration of knowledge left its imprint. Ancient alchemical texts that appeared in Europe during the Middle Ages bore unmistakable traces of Egyptian and Hermetic thought. The Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, became the cornerstone of alchemy, and it reads less like a scientific manual and more like a surviving fragment of a cosmic philosophy that predates history itself. As above, so below, it declares, a phrase that once echoed through the corridors of the vanished libraries. Some legends go even further. They claim that long after Alexandria's destruction, small enclaves of priests continued to guard sacred scrolls in remote sanctuaries, deep within the deserts of Egypt and along the Nile's hidden oases. These secret custodians allegedly became the ancestors of the Brotherhood of the Serpent and other early initiatory orders that later evolved into the Hermetic societies of the Renaissance. According to these stories, the Brotherhoods preserved the keys of Thoth, a set of coded texts that contain the essence of the old world's cosmology, metaphysics, and hidden sciences. Whether such an order truly existed or not, its mythic presence suggests humanity's deep intuition that knowledge never really dies. It simply changes form and retreats into myth until the time is right to re-emerge. During the early Christian era, many of these surviving ideas were absorbed and reinterpreted within new spiritual frameworks. Early Gnostic sects, for instance, spoke of divine sparks trapped in material existence. Awaiting awakening, a theme strikingly similar to ancient Egyptian beliefs about the soul's journey and the cycle of rebirth. The Essenes, a mysterious Jewish sect active during the 1st century BCE, also displayed curious parallels to Egyptian initiatory practices, ritual purification, coded teachings, and a deep reverence for hidden truth. Could they have been direct inheritors of Alexandrian refugees or temple scribes? Many esoteric historians believe the connection is undeniable. Centuries later, as the Islamic Golden Age blossomed, scholars in Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad translated ancient texts on astronomy, medicine, and metaphysics that bore the unmistakable fingerprints of the old Egyptian system. Through them, fragments of the vanished library found their way back into circulation, disguised under Arabic names but carrying the same eternal principles. From these translations, Europe would eventually rediscover its lost wisdom during the Renaissance, igniting another cycle of awakening. This migration of knowledge was not just physical but spiritual. As it traveled from one civilization to another, it changed languages, symbols, and forms, yet the essence remained the same: the belief that the universe is alive, that consciousness shapes reality, and that humanity's destiny is to remember its forgotten origins. Each culture that received this wisdom added its own interpretation, creating layers of mystery that now obscure the original truth. But within those layers, the same pulse beats, the echo of an ancient mind that refused to die. Perhaps the most powerful evidence of this hidden exodus lies not in ruins or relics, but in ideas that refuse to disappear. Concepts like sacred geometry, reincarnation, the unity of spirit and matter, all trace back to the same source. They surface again and again, from the mystery temples of Egypt to the philosophies of Plato, the scrolls of the Gnostics, the manuscripts of Arab alchemists, and finally, the secret doctrines of the Rosicrucians and Freemasons. It is as if the truth itself has been traveling across time, changing names but never essence, always whispering to those who dare to listen. So while the world may remember Alexandria as a place that burned, the fire did not mark an ending, it marked a transformation. The knowledge once held in open halls simply went underground, hidden within symbols, guarded by initiates, waiting for future generations to rediscover it. The torch of wisdom was not extinguished. It was carried through the darkness, its flame kept alive by those who understood that even in exile, truth has its own way of surviving. For every age that destroys, another age will remember. The scrolls of Alexandria may have turned to ash, but the ideas within them became immortal, scattered across continents, embedded in secret societies, encoded in art and architecture, and preserved in the very myths that shaped our world. The exodus of knowledge was not an escape. It was a seed, planted in the hidden soil of history, waiting for light once more.
The rain falls softly over a modern city. Neon lights shimmer in puddles as a voice whispers. In every age, those who claim to see the future shaped the present. But in our age, the prophets no longer wear robes. They wear suits, they run think tanks, and they write algorithms. This is where the documentary takes a sharp turn, from a mythic to the modern, from oracles to artificial intelligence. The central question emerges: has prophecy evolved into data prediction? And if so, who controls it now? We begin with a montage of ancient temples fading into modern command centers. Massive digital screens filled with real-time analytics, stock predictions, and behavioral maps. The narrator's voice is steady, darkly poetic. Once upon a time, priests read the stars. Now, they read your data. The language has changed, the intent has not. In the past, prophecy relied on mystery, a whisper from divine realms. Today, it's mathematics that whispers. Governments and corporations now use predictive algorithms to anticipate human behavior. When we'll buy, protest, migrate, or even fall in love. To the untrained eye, this looks like progress. But through the esoteric lens, it's something far older, the rebirth of prophecy through machines. The narrator explains, prophecy has always been about control, not of nature, but of narrative. The one who defines the future defines the limits of the possible. We trace the origins of this control back through the centuries. The medieval world believed in fate because it lacked data. The modern world believes in data because it lacks faith. Yet both forms of belief surrender decision-making to an unseen authority. Whether it's a god, a seer, or a computer model, people act according to what they are told will happen. In both cases, the prophecy fulfills itself. The story then steps into the secretive world of psychological warfare during the 20th century. During World War II, intelligence agencies began experimenting with what they called predictive behavior. Propaganda experts studied how forecasting public moods could shape political outcomes. The narrator notes, once again, prophecy was weaponized, not through divine revelation, but through psychological suggestion. The same logic that once made oracles powerful now made propaganda indispensable. We see historical footage, Nazi astrologers advising the Reich, British intelligence printing false horoscopes to demoralize enemy populations, and Cold War think tanks predicting global trends decades ahead. By the 1960s, groups like Rand Corporation were using computer models to forecast wars, revolutions, and population growth. They called it scenario analysis. In simpler terms, they were trying to see the future. But the deeper question lingers. Were these organizations predicting what would happen, or subtly guiding it to match their models? The narrator's voice drops. If prophecy is belief, and belief directs action, then the one who controls prediction controls reality. As technology advanced, the tools of prophecy became more precise. Financial markets turned into temples of prediction. Algorithms forecasted economic crashes, elections, and social unrest with eerie accuracy. And just like ancient priests, modern analysts began to interpret these results as if they were sacred truths. The prophecy of numbers replaced the prophecy of gods. Yet, as always, there are hidden hands behind the system. A network of intelligence agencies, global corporations, and think tanks now possess data vast enough to model human civilization itself. Their algorithms don't just predict, they influence. Search engines, recommendation systems, and targeted ads gently shape what people see, feel, and believe. Over time, this becomes modern prophecy in disguise. The voice of a narrator grows colder. The prophets of old used incense and smoke. Today's prophets use Wi-Fi and code. This transition leads to one of the section's central revelations, the uncanny resemblance between ancient esoteric models of time and modern data cycles. In mystical traditions, history moved in patterns, ages, yugas, astrological eras. In modern science, we now speak of feedback loops, social cycles, and algorithmic trends. Both describe the same thing, the recurrence of predictable rhythms within chaos. What once belonged to mystics now belongs to mathematicians. But not everyone believes this shift is innocent. The documentary unveils theories that certain secret organizations, descendants of ancient initiates, foresaw this transformation centuries ago. Groups like the Rosicrucians, the Bavarian Illuminati, and even early Masonic lodges spoke of an age when knowledge shall replace faith and machines shall mirror the mind of God. Some of their writings predicted the emergence of global communication networks and predictive systems that could simulate human destiny. The narrator connects the dots. Perhaps the so-called New World Order is not a government, but a program, one designed to fulfill prophecies written long before the first computer was built. We move to modern prophets, not mystics in deserts, but data scientists in glass towers. Figures like Ray Kurzweil speak of the singularity, a moment when artificial intelligence surpasses human control. Elon Musk warns that AI could become an all-seeing god. Meanwhile, global organizations quietly build digital twins of Earth, simulation models that predict everything from economic collapse to climate migrations. These models are not just mirrors of reality. They're blueprints for action. Governments respond to predictions. Corporations invest according to them. And thus the forecast becomes truth. The scene cuts to a montage of screens showing words like predictive policing, social credit, market forecasts, election modeling. The narrator intones. Prophecy has gone corporate. Destiny is now a subscription service. And yet, beneath the cynicism lies an ancient echo. The desire to know the future, to pierce the veil of uncertainty, has always been humanity's oldest temptation. The serpent's promise in Eden was not power or wealth, but knowledge. The same thirst drives our algorithms today. But just as in Eden, knowledge comes with a price. A chilling realization dawns. Prophecy's evolution has come full circle. Once, humans looked to the heavens for signs. Now, we feed signs into the machine and ask it to tell us who we are. The stars have been replaced by servers, the divine by data. But the effect is identical. Belief transforms into obedience. The narrator's tone softens as we near the end of the section. Every empire in history has built its prophets. The priests of Delphi, the magi of Babylon, the astrologers of Rome, the visionaries of the church, the code writers of today, all promise the same thing, certainty. And in return, they demand only one sacrifice, free will. The closing imagery shows an AI interface projected over ancient stone carvings, blending past and future. The narrator whispers, the prophecy never ended. It merely changed its medium. The music fades into a low hum, like the sound of circuitry breathing. The scene closes on a simple image, a computer screen flickering with lines of code that slowly rearrange themselves into an ancient sigil. The voice delivers the final line of the section. From oracles to algorithms, the language of destiny remains the same. Only the hands pulling the strings have changed. The bells of an old cathedral echo through the mist. A voice begins, low and deliberate. Every empire needs time on its side. and those who rule the calendar rule the world. This section unveils one of the most subtle, yet powerful, tools used by hidden powers to control the perception of destiny, the manipulation of time itself. For centuries, the church and the crown dictated not only what people believed, but when they believed it. Prophecy, faith, and governance were all bound to a celestial schedule, one carefully crafted and guarded by those in power. We begin in the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine merged religion and empire. The newly Christianized Roman Empire faced a problem: chaos in the calendar. Different sects celebrated Easter on different days. Prophecies clashed with political timelines. To unify belief, Constantine called the Council of Nicaea, where bishops and astronomers rewrote time itself. The new calendar aligned festivals with celestial cycles, but also with imperial needs. Easter, for instance, was positioned near the spring equinox, symbolizing renewal and empire's eternal return. The narrator's tone is ominous. It wasn't just about worship. It was about synchronization, aligning the hearts of millions to the rhythm of power. As the centuries passed, prophecy and time became inseparable. Biblical texts predicted the return of Christ within certain ages or celestial signs. Monarchs commissioned astrologers to ensure their coronations occurred under favorable stars. The line between divine timing and political convenience blurred completely. The church proclaimed certain years as jubilees, holy cycles of forgiveness and rebirth, conveniently used to forgive debts or consolidate land ownership. Time itself became a mechanism of control. Then came the greatest reordering of all: Pope Gregory XII's reform in 1582, the Gregorian calendar. Officially, it was introduced to correct inaccuracies in the Julian system. Unofficially, it became the church's way to claim dominion over history. The narrator whispers, the new calendar wasn't just a measurement of time. It was a declaration that Rome, not the heavens, would define the age. Protestant nations resisted at first, calling it a papal conspiracy. But over the next centuries, even they submitted. Eventually, the entire world bowed to the same system, a silent empire of time, stretching across every border and belief. Every second on earth, every date and holiday, now ticks to the rhythm established by one man's decree. The documentary shifts to the crown, the temporal partner of prophecy. Kings and queens often claimed their rule was foretold by divine prophecy or celestial alignment. In medieval Europe, coronations were designed as cosmic rituals. The anointing oil, the positioning of stars, even the hour chosen for the crown to touch the monarch's head, all timed to perfection. Royal astrologers held immense influence, sometimes greater than generals. Their charts decided wars, treaties, and marriages. But the narrator poses a darker question. Were these astrologers merely reading the stars, or following a hidden script that ensured the stars always favored their masters? Evidence suggests that elite families shared secret almanacs, records of astronomical cycles linked to biblical prophecy. These documents allowed them to claim divine legitimacy whenever history demanded it. If famine struck, it was foretold. If a rival king fell, it was written in the heavens. Fate became propaganda. Then, as the Renaissance dawned, science began to replace faith, yet the manipulation of time continued. The age of exploration was not just about discovery. It was about domination of the meridian, the prime measure of the earth. When Britain established Greenwich Mean Time in the 19th century, it became the new axis of global synchronization. The empire's ships, railways, and colonies all obeyed one central clock. Once again, prophecy and order merged, this time under the guise of navigation and progress. The narrator's tone tightens. The church had sanctified time. The crown had standardized it. Together, they built a cage of minutes and millennia, and called it civilization. Yet hidden beneath this structure, mystics whispered of another calendar, a secret rhythm of the earth. The Mayan long count, the Yuga cycles of India, and the zodiacal ages of astrology all spoke of vast cosmic seasons, each lasting thousands of years. These were not man-made, but celestial, measuring not the rotation of the planet, but the evolution of consciousness itself. The elites studied these systems quietly. They knew when belief would rise, when revolutions would burn, when faith would fade. For them, prophecy was not prediction, it was scheduling. The music grows haunting as images of clocks dissolve into stars. The narrator explains, to the initiated, time was never linear. It was circular, a repeating wheel of creation and destruction. And those who knew where they stood on that wheel could appear prophetic, because they understood the cycle. By the Enlightenment, this secret knowledge became hidden under scientific terminology. Cycles replaced prophecies. Economists, historians, and astronomers spoke of patterns, the rise and fall of markets, empires, and eras. Yet, these modern studies trace back to the same esoteric principle, that time repeats and destiny can be managed by those who calculate it correctly. The final scene of this section returns to the cathedral from the opening. The camera pans up the ancient clock tower, its gears turning slowly. The narrator speaks one final line, his voice echoing like a prophecy. Every clock is a monument to control, a reminder that humanity does not live by seconds and hours, but by the invisible hand that decides when the next age begins. Thunder rolls across a darkened sky as the narrator's voice rises from the silence. Every empire keeps two calendars, one for the people and one for those who truly rule them. This section dives into one of the most hidden and fascinating aspects of prophetic power. The secret calendars said to be used by ruling families, secret orders, and elite circles to time wars, revolutions, and global transformations. On the surface, history appears random. But beneath the surface, the same intervals, symbols, and dates repeat with unnerving precision. To some, it's coincidence. To others, it's design. We open with an image of a dusty chamber deep beneath the Vatican Library. Candles flicker across manuscripts filled with lunar charts, Hebrew letters, and strange geometric patterns. These are not religious texts. They're celestial maps. Some date back to Babylon, others to Alexandria. Each one tracks time not by years, but by cycles, the hidden heartbeat of history. The narrator whispers, those who understood these cycles could appear as prophets or kings. The earliest known secret calendar may have come from the Chaldean Magi of ancient Mesopotamia. They divided time into great years, each lasting 25,920 years, the time it takes for the Earth's axis to complete one precession. This vast cycle was broken into 12 smaller ages, mirroring the 12 zodiac signs. Each age, they believed, marked a transformation in human consciousness. When power shifted from one sign to the next, empires fell and new faiths rose. The age of Taurus saw the worship of the bull in Egypt and Sumer. The age of Aries brought warrior gods and conquest. The age of Pisces ushered in Christ and organized religion. And now, as we stand at the dawn of Aquarius, the world trembles once again, between faith and technology, chaos and awakening. The narrator's tone deepens. The elites of every era knew these transitions were inevitable, but they also knew they could guide them. We then move to the Kabbalists of medieval Spain and Provence, who studied the Sephirotic cycles, mystical emanations believed to shape eras of creation and destruction. In their teachings, every 500-year period represented a tikkun, a correction of the previous age's imbalance. Hidden schools within Jewish mysticism allegedly preserved these timelines, linking them to both historical and prophetic events, from the fall of Jerusalem to the founding of modern Israel. Their system was not just spiritual, it was geopolitical prophecy disguised as theology. The camera shifts to 15th century Florence, where Hermetic philosophers and early Masons revived these ancient ideas under a new banner, the divine architecture of time. They believed human history followed the pattern of sacred geometry, that empires rose according to the same ratios that governed the orbits of planets and the building of cathedrals. Their hidden motto, As above, so below, as within, so without. To them, prophecy was nothing more than the ability to see when a cycle was about to reset, when the pendulum of fate would swing. But what made this knowledge dangerous was how it was used. Monarchs, bankers, and secret councils began aligning their actions to these cosmic schedules. Wars, coronations, and reforms were timed to coincide with eclipses, solstices, and conjunctions of certain planets. To the masses, it looked like divine coincidence, but to those behind the curtain, it was careful orchestration. We then fast forward to modern times. Historians and conspiracy researchers alike have noticed patterns in global events that mirror these ancient cycles. Every 80 to 90 years, the world experiences a period of upheaval, the so-called fourth turning pattern described by social theorists Strauss and Howe. Their research suggests that history follows a repeating rhythm of crisis and renewal, eerily similar to the esoteric calendars once guarded by secret orders. The narrator asks, is this just sociology or a continuation of the ancient prophecy code under a new name? Some claim elite families still operate on hidden timetables. The Rothschilds, the Windsors, the Vatican, and certain Masonic lodges are rumored to use numerological calendars to time economic resets and political transitions. Certain years, 1913, 1945, 2001, 2020, seem to appear as pivot points in world history. Each marked the birth of a new order from chaos. Even stock markets and global crises appear to follow lunar and solar cycles. Modern financial astrologers still advise hedge funds on these patterns, a practice that secretly echoes the same Babylonian time science used by ancient priests. The narrator continues, when people say history repeats itself, they speak a truth few dare to understand. It repeats because it's made to. Next, we explore the symbolism of 33, a number deeply tied to Freemasonry and the geometry of the Earth. The 33rd parallel passes through many key locations: Jerusalem, Baghdad, Hiroshima, Phoenix. It is the number of initiation, enlightenment, and sacrifice. Major historical turning points, from wars to assassinations, often align with its numerological resonance. Whether by chance or choice, the same coordinates and dates appear again and again. In whispered tones, the narrator suggests, to the uninitiated, these patterns are random. To those who keep the secret calendar, they are signatures. As the film lingers on images of celestial charts and global maps, a deeper idea unfolds. Prophecy, as we know it, may have been designed not to reveal the future, but to conceal the mechanism by which the future is created. The prophets were not recipients of divine visions. They were mathematicians, astronomers, and strategists, aligning humanity with a cosmic metronome only they could read. We conclude with a slow zoom out from a ticking astronomical clock, its golden gears turning against a dark sky. The narrator speaks in a calm, almost reverent tone. Perhaps the greatest secret of prophecy is not that the future can be seen, but that time itself can be written. And those who hold the hidden calendar do not predict the ages. They decide when one ends and another begins. Mist rises from a river valley as dawn breaks over an ancient city. The narrator's voice, calm but magnetic, begins, long before kings declared edicts, long before generals drew battle lines, there were those who claimed to see the future, the oracles and seers. They did not hold armies or treasury chests, yet their influence was profound. Through prophecy, divination, and hidden knowledge, they guided empires, inspired revolutions, and shaped the very course of history. This section explores the role of oracles, seers, and mystics as the subtle architects of civilizations, highlighting how individuals with access to hidden knowledge influence political decisions, military campaigns, and societal structures. Their influence, though often cloaked in mystery and ritual, was instrumental in determining the rise and fall of rulers and dynasties. We begin with ancient Greece, where oracles such as the Pythia at Delphi held extraordinary sway. The Pythia's pronouncements, delivered in cryptic verse, were sought by kings, generals, and envoys before major decisions. The Oracle of Delphi advised leaders on war, alliances, and governance. While her words were ambiguous, the perception of divine insight carried immense authority. Greek city-states, often embroiled in rivalry, deferred to these pronouncements, shaping strategies and forging pacts according to her guidance. Even when misinterpreted, the social weight of the oracle's authority ensured that decisions were made in alignment with the perceived will of the gods. The narrator explains, "The oracle did not command armies, but she commanded belief. And belief can move mountains, topple kings, and ignite wars." We then move to ancient Rome, where Sibylline prophets played a comparable role. The Sibylline books, a collection of prophetic texts, were consulted during crises, from natural disasters to military defeats. Roman leaders interpreted these writings to justify campaigns, religious rites, and public policies. Often, the ambiguity of the prophecies allowed for flexible manipulation. Leaders could claim divine sanction for actions already planned, creating the illusion that events unfolded according to fate rather than strategy. This merging of hidden knowledge with political control demonstrates how prophecy served as both guide and tool for shaping history. The documentary then explores Egyptian seers, whose predictions and rituals influenced pharaohs and dynasties. Priests interpreted celestial events, omens, and the movement of stars to advise rulers on matters of state. Egyptian oracles were not only spiritual authorities, but strategic advisors, blending cosmic insight with political acumen. From timing military campaigns to orchestrating religious festivals, the advice of seers ensured that rulers acted in ways that reinforced their legitimacy and power. In Mesopotamia, astrologers and diviners played a similarly critical role. Babylonians recorded astronomical phenomena meticulously, believing that celestial patterns mirrored events on Earth. Kings relied on these predictions to govern their empires, anticipate rebellion, or decide when to go to war. The combination of meticulous observation and symbolic interpretation gave these oracles authority over decisions with far-reaching consequences. The line between prophecy and strategic intelligence was often indistinguishable. The section then examines medieval Europe, where seers and mystics influenced monarchs and political leaders. Figures such as Merlin, though steeped in legend, exemplify the archetype of the prophet advisor. Kings sought guidance not only for personal decisions, but for matters affecting entire kingdoms. Seers often held secret knowledge, whether drawn from ancient texts, observation of celestial patterns, or esoteric traditions, that gave them insight into political and military matters. Their counsel could determine the timing of battles, succession, or the negotiation of treaties, often masked under the guise of mystical vision. The narrative shifts to Asia, highlighting the role of oracles and diviners in China and Japan. In China, the mandate of heaven dictated that rulers could rise or fall based on divine favor, interpreted by seers who analyzed omens and natural phenomena. Court astrologers advised emperors on governance, military strategy, and diplomacy. In Japan, Shinto priests and onmyoji, yin-yang diviners, provided similar guidance, integrating astrology, ritual, and mystical insight to shape decisions. These systems reveal that across continents, the combination of prophecy and advisory power was central to governance. The documentary then explores Renaissance Europe, where seers, astrologers, and occultists wielded influence in courts and among the elite. Figures like Nostradamus exemplify the integration of hidden knowledge with political manipulation. His quatrains, cryptic and symbolic, were interpreted by rulers and advisors to justify campaigns, anticipate rivals, and consolidate power. Manuscripts, talismans, and ceremonial tools often accompanied prophetic guidance, amplifying its perceived legitimacy. The blending of esoteric wisdom with political strategy allowed select individuals to influence the course of nations without ever taking direct action. The narrator emphasizes seers did not fight battles, levy taxes, or govern provinces. Yet the knowledge they guarded, interpreted, and sometimes manipulated could shape entire civilizations. Their influence was invisible, but the outcomes were tangible. The section also addresses the psychological dimension. Prophecy works because humans are pattern-seeking creatures, predisposed to act in ways that fulfill perceived destiny. Oracles and seers understood this, using ambiguity to ensure flexibility and obedience. Their power lay not only in prediction, but in the ability to shape belief, aligning human action with desired outcomes. Whether through fear, inspiration, or perceived divine authority, the words of the prophet became a force that guided behavior at both individual and societal levels. Finally, the documentary examines the legacy of oracles in modern times. While contemporary society may no longer rely on mystical seers, the principle persists. Predictive analytics, intelligence agencies, economic forecasting, and strategic think tanks function as secular oracles. They interpret patterns, anticipate events, and advise leaders, often shaping outcomes in ways invisible to the general public. The methods have evolved, but the objective remains the same: influence perception, guide decisions, and shape the course of human history. The section concludes with a sweeping visual montage: Delphi's crumbling temple, the Roman Forum at dusk, pyramids under a starry sky, medieval castles shrouded in mist, and modern financial and military command centers. The narrator closes, "Across time, the oracles and seers have remained masters of hidden knowledge. They have guided kings, influenced battles, and shaped empires, unseen, yet all-powerful. History may remember the warriors, the rulers, and the conquerors, but it is the seers who have truly pulled the strings of destiny." A gray dawn creeps over the rooftops of Paris. The camera sweeps past the remnants of centuries-old cathedrals and into the chambers of power. A quiet voice begins. History tells us who won wars, who conquered lands, who ruled empires. But hidden beneath the record of kings and generals lies another force, a force that whispers the future and bends the present: prophecy. This section explores how prophecies, both cryptic and orchestrated, have been used as instruments of political power, shaping empires from behind the curtain of public history. The story opens with a glimpse into medieval Europe, where monarchs often invoked divine sanction to legitimize their rule. Kings claimed their authority came directly from God. Yet behind the scenes, astrologers, seers, and advisors interpreted the signs to time battles, marriages, and treaties. Their influence was subtle but profound: a coronation at a precise astrological alignment, a marriage arranged according to numerology, or a war launched to coincide with a planetary conjunction could secure the appearance of divine favor. The narrator explains, prophecy was not merely foretelling. It was guidance, control, and manipulation, a tool wielded by those who understood both fate and belief. One striking example comes from the reign of Henry VIII, who relied on astrologers and court mystics to advise on matters of succession and war. While the Church publicly endorsed his authority as divinely appointed, it was his astrologers' interpretations of celestial movements that informed the timing of critical decisions. Battles were fought under auspicious stars, treaties signed when omens promised compliance. The power of prophecy here was psychological, not mystical, convincing both ruler and subjects that destiny itself favored the monarch. Moving to France, we examine Catherine de' Medici, the queen mother who consulted Nostradamus and other astrologers to maintain political dominance during the wars of religion. Her court became a hub of secret knowledge, where prophecies were decoded not as predictions but as strategic tools. Quatrains referring to kings, lions, and false leaders were interpreted as indicators for political maneuvering. Catherine's careful attention to such omens ensured her influence over the fragile balance of power in France, making her a subtle architect of her own era. The documentary then shifts to England and the Tudor court, where prophetic tracts and visionary pamphlets proliferated. Many were publicly accessible, appearing to warn of divine judgment or social upheaval. In reality, some were deliberately disseminated to influence public perception and preempt rebellion. Prophecy served as both shield and weapon. It legitimized rulers while steering the populace along a predetermined path. The narrator pauses as the camera pans over printed quatrains, esoteric diagrams, and court manuscripts. In every case, the voice and tones, those who understood the patterns of belief could predict the reactions of entire nations. Knowledge of prophecy was a form of political leverage more powerful than armies. We then explore the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, a figure repeatedly linked to Nostradamus' writings. Contemporary and later interpretations of his ascendance often cite quatrains that seem to foresee a young lion rising to power in the West. But historians now suggest a more deliberate strategy. Napoleon and his advisors cultivated public fascination with prophecy, ensuring that his image as destiny's chosen was reinforced by interpretation and rumor. By aligning his military campaigns and public persona with prophetic narratives, Napoleon transformed the perception of inevitability into a tool for obedience and admiration. The section delves deeper into the interplay between prophecy and propaganda. During the American Revolution, pamphlets and sermons frequently invoked the idea that independence was foretold by God or hinted at in classical prophecy. The Founding Fathers, aware of the persuasive power of such beliefs, sometimes referenced biblical and historical precedents to encourage unity and justify rebellion. Even the Declaration of Independence carries echoes of a teleological narrative, a sense that history itself favored the colonist cause. Similarly, the Russian Tsars utilized prophecy and divination to manage both court politics and public perception. Seers were consulted during succession crises, while state-sanctioned interpretations of dreams and omens were broadcast to reinforce the legitimacy of imperial decrees. Prophecy here became an instrument of psychological governance, guiding not only rulers but entire populations through the illusion of preordained order. The documentary emphasizes that prophecy's power relies on a simple mechanism: belief. When subjects and rulers themselves accept the inevitability of certain outcomes, they unconsciously act to fulfill them. Wars, reforms, revolutions, and alliances are subtly shaped not only by strategy, but by the perception that events are fated. Those who master the art of prophecy can manipulate both expectation and action, steering empires as if conducting an invisible symphony. The narrator then draws a chilling connection to modern politics. Election cycles, media narratives, and public sentiment are now analyzed through predictive models, algorithms that forecast behavior and influence outcomes. In many ways, the digital age is a continuation of the old principle. Prophecy has evolved from quatrains and omens to code and statistics. Those who interpret the data, whether political advisors, analysts, or secret councils, wield the same influence over public belief that astrologers and seers held centuries ago. The section concludes with a powerful reflection. From the courts of kings to the corridors of modern power, prophecy has always been less about predicting the future than shaping it. The rulers who understood this principle did not simply survive history, they wrote it. The final scene lingers on a dimly lit map of Europe, pins marking battles, coronations, and revolutions. Overlaid are astrological charts and faint quatrains, as if the past itself has been guided by unseen hands. The narrator's voice fades, echoing a haunting truth. The world is not as random as it seems. Somewhere in the shadows of power, prophecy still whispers, and someone always listens. A dimly lit vault opens to reveal shelves lined with objects that seem ordinary at first glance. A chalice, a carved idol, a sun-bleached manuscript. The narrator's voice begins, low and hypnotic. Some objects are more than they appear. They are vessels of influence, relics that carry meaning far beyond their material form. They are artifacts of destiny, tools that have shaped civilizations in ways history seldom acknowledges. This section explores the tangible side of prophecy and secret influence, the hidden artifacts that rulers, mystics, and secret societies have used to consolidate power and guide events. These objects are not merely symbolic. In many cases, their discovery, possession, or display has directly influenced political, religious, and social movements. We begin with the Holy Grail, perhaps the most famous of all legendary artifacts. Beyond the myth of a cup that held Christ's blood lies a subtler story, that of a symbol carefully woven into European consciousness. During the Middle Ages, knights, kings, and secretive orders invoked the Grail not just as a spiritual quest, but as a source of legitimacy. Possession, or even the claim of possession, implied divine favor. Armies rallied, treaties were formed, and dynasties legitimized themselves through connection to the Grail mythos. In this sense, the Grail functioned less as a sacred cup and more as a tool of narrative control, a prophecy in object form, shaping belief and therefore action. The narrator's voice deepens, objects of power not in themselves, but in the meaning assigned to them. And those who control the story control reality. Next, the documentary examines the Ark of the Covenant, described in biblical texts as the repository of God's commandments. Scholars have debated its existence for centuries, but whether real or symbolic, it functioned as a center of political and spiritual influence. The Israelites carried it into battle, believing its presence ensured victory. Whether the Ark ever existed materially is less important than the psychological effect it had on empires, armies, and faiths. The principle is consistent. Objects associated with prophecy or divine favor can shape behavior and alter historical outcomes. We move then to Nostradamus manuscripts and personal relics. Surviving quatrains and handwritten notes often included symbolic artifacts, astrological charts, coded drawings, and talismans intended to encode knowledge for those in the know. Ownership of these items could confer power, allowing certain courts or individuals to interpret events with apparent insight, manipulating rivals and influencing succession. The artifacts were part prophecy, part intelligence, physical keys to the invisible architecture of destiny. The section then explores the occult treasures of medieval Europe. Alchemical vessels, relics of saints, and ceremonial swords were often housed in secret chambers. Beyond religious devotion, these objects were imbued with meaning by secret societies who used them as tools of social control. The narrator notes, an object's value lies in the belief invested in it. A sword becomes a symbol of authority. A chalice becomes a guarantor of legitimacy. A manuscript becomes a roadmap of power. We also examine Egyptian and Mesopotamian artifacts, obelisks, statues, and coded inscriptions. Scholars and initiates believed these objects contained hidden knowledge about celestial cycles, rulership, and the rhythm of civilization. Pharaohs, priests, and ruling elites treated these artifacts as instruments of influence. Through public display, ritual, and myth, they subtly guided the masses, embedding belief systems that ensured obedience and social cohesion. The effect mirrors that of prophecy. Those who understood the hidden meaning could predict and shape events. The documentary highlights the continuity into the modern era. Artifacts of destiny are not relics frozen in time. In the 18th and 19th centuries, collectors, industrialists, and secret societies sought ancient manuscripts, talismans, and symbols, sometimes acquiring them for public display, sometimes hiding them in private libraries. These objects acted as both inspiration and strategy. Knowledge of their symbolic power allowed the elite to manipulate public perception, validate political authority, and direct the course of history. The narrator then draws a direct link between objects and modern propaganda. National flags, monuments, commemorative coins, and even ceremonial architecture are contemporary artifacts of influence. While less mystical than a grail or a relic, their power lies in the same principle. Symbolism shapes belief, belief shapes action, and action determines history. The section closes with a reflection on human psychology and the timelessness of artifacts. Objects are mirrors, reflecting not only the world around them, but the minds that interpret them. They carry stories, codes, and the authority to shape destinies. And throughout history, those who understood this truth have used artifacts as instruments of power, hidden yet profoundly effective. The camera pans across a vault once more, each item glowing softly in candlelight. The narrator concludes, "Perhaps the most enduring prophecy is not written in words, but forged in objects, tangible remnants of invisible hands guiding humanity's path." The first light of dawn spills across a battlefield, illuminating a scarred landscape of churned earth, abandoned armor, and shattered banners. The narrator begins, voice low and commanding. Wars are remembered for the clashes of armies, the strategies of generals, and the courage of soldiers. But beneath the surface of history, another force has guided the outcome of countless conflicts: prophecy. Far from being mere prediction, prophecy has often acted as a hidden strategy, shaping decisions, timing, and the psychology of nations. This section explores the profound role of prophecy as a hidden instrument behind the wars that defined civilizations. From the ancient empires of Mesopotamia to the modern battlegrounds of the 20th century, prophecy has influenced not only rulers but entire populations, acting as a subtle yet powerful force that dictated the course of history. We begin with the Crusades, a series of wars framed as holy missions, yet deeply entwined with prophecy and divine sanction. Leaders invoked scripture and mystical signs to rally armies, claiming to fulfill divine will. Pilgrims and soldiers were motivated not merely by loyalty or ambition, but by the belief that they were enacting destiny itself. Chronicles from the period describe celestial signs, comets, eclipses, and unusual planetary alignments, interpreted as endorsements from God. The narrative emphasizes belief in prophecy transformed ordinary men into instruments of destiny, granting them a perceived moral imperative that amplified their courage and determination on the battlefield. The narrator continues, "When men believe that the stars themselves guide their actions, ordinary strategy is magnified by faith. The sword is no longer a weapon. It becomes an instrument of divine will." The documentary then moves to medieval Europe, where kings and nobles relied heavily on astrologers, soothsayers, and oracles before engaging in battle. The War of the Roses in England illustrates this vividly. Prophecies circulated predicting the rise and fall of dynasties, influencing alliances, betrayals, and military movements. Nobles acted not only to secure personal gain, but to fulfill or prevent prophetic outcomes. Public belief in these predictions ensured that the populace participated willingly in campaigns, bolstering morale and shaping the political landscape. We then shift focus to Asia, examining China and Japan. In China, the mandate of heaven dictated that rulers could rise or fall based on celestial signs. Astrologers and diviners monitored eclipses, comets, and planetary alignments to determine the legitimacy of dynasties and guide military strategy. Successful generals were often those who interpreted these signs correctly, while failures were attributed to cosmic disfavor. In Japan, samurai leaders also consulted omens and astrological readings, believing that the timing of attacks, ceremonial rites, and battlefield positioning could influence the outcome in accordance with universal order. Prophecy, in these contexts, was a sophisticated form of strategic intelligence, blending psychology, ritual, and timing. The documentary delves deeper into Napoleonic Europe, where prophecy and public perception played a decisive role in shaping events. Napoleon Bonaparte's meteoric rise was entwined with interpretations of Nostradamus' quatrains. Tales of a young lion rising in the West were used both by his supporters and enemies to frame his campaigns as inevitable. Napoleon himself understood the power of narrative, cultivating an image of destinies chosen. He timed military movements, political announcements, and public appearances to align with symbolic dates and events, reinforcing the perception that his victories were preordained. Soldiers and citizens alike internalized this sense of inevitability, amplifying morale and compliance across the empire. The section emphasizes that prophecy has always operated on psychological layers. During the American Revolution, pamphlets and sermons framed the fight for independence as fulfillment of divine promise. The perception that liberation was destined influenced not only public sentiment, but military morale. Leaders harnessed these narratives to inspire unity, sustain resistance, and legitimize rebellion. Similarly, during the French Revolution, revolutionary propaganda intertwined with prophetic interpretation, portraying upheaval as historically necessary, a purging of corruption sanctioned by the unfolding of destiny. The documentary then explores the psychological mechanisms of prophecy in warfare. Prophetic belief can function as both motivation and manipulation. Soldiers who perceive themselves as agents of destiny fight with extraordinary courage. Civilians, convinced that events are fated, comply more readily with directives. Leaders exploit this dynamic to orchestrate outcomes that appear inevitable, creating a feedback loop in which belief and action reinforce each other. Examples from medieval, Renaissance, and modern conflicts demonstrate the persistence of this principle. Prophecy is not passive prediction. It is active orchestration of human behavior. The narrative turns to modern conflicts, illustrating that while prophecy may now be secularized, its principle endures. In World War II, intelligence, strategy, and propaganda created the illusion of inevitable victories or defeats. Leaders carefully manipulated perception, using forecasts, rumors, and psychological operations to influence enemy and civilian populations. The timing of key operations, the framing of battles, and the dissemination of prophetic expectations shape behavior on both sides, echoing the methods of astrologers and seers centuries earlier. The section also examines the interplay between artifacts and battlefield morale. Sacred relics, flags, and banners serve as focal points of belief, reinforcing the idea that victory was preordained. The Crusaders, for example, carried crosses and relics that symbolized divine favor, while samurai clans wielded talismans and ceremonial standards to inspire loyalty and fear. Modern parallels exist in symbols, ceremonies, and media narratives that unify forces and justify action.
A particularly fascinating segment addresses prophecy as strategy in revolutions and civil conflicts. The Russian Revolution, for instance, featured strategic use of religious and historical symbolism to frame change as inevitable. Similarly, nationalist movements across the 19th and 20th centuries invoked prophetic language to mobilize support, sustain morale, and legitimize radical actions. Leaders understood that shaping the perception of destiny could be more effective than coercion alone, turning abstract belief into tangible outcomes. The narrator then draws a chilling insight. Wars are fought with swords, cannons, and strategy, but the most enduring battles are fought in minds and hearts. Those who understand prophecy, who shape belief, wield a power that armies alone cannot match. The documentary ties these threads together, showing that prophecy's role in war is both continuous and evolving. From Babylonian priest-kings to modern military analysts, the principle is consistent. Understanding cycles, timing, and perception allows individuals or groups to influence outcomes far beyond their visible power. History, therefore, is not merely a record of battles. It is a reflection of human belief, orchestrated by those who can read, predict, and manipulate the rhythm of destiny. The section concludes with cinematic montage. Fields of medieval battle, European war rooms, Napoleonic armies marching under the shadow of prophecy, American revolutionaries rallying to the cause, and modern soldiers guided by intelligence and psychological operations. The narrator's final words resonate like a warning. From the Crusades to contemporary conflicts, prophecy has always been a hidden weapon, shaping strategy, guiding rulers, and determining the fate of nations. Those who understand its power do not merely witness history. They write it long before the rest of the world knows the game has begun. The camera slowly pans over a quiet battlefield at dusk, the sky painted in shades of fire and twilight, leaving the audience with the sense that every war, past and present, carries echoes of unseen forces, guiding events from beyond the visible world.
A cathedral looms in twilight, its spires piercing a sky streaked with crimson and gold. Inside, candles flicker, casting long shadows across ancient frescoes. The narrator begins, voice low and mesmerizing. Religion promises certainty in a chaotic world. But what if the certainty it offers is guided by invisible hands? What if prophecy has always been less about divine revelation and more about subtle influence? This section delves deep into the intertwined history of prophecy and religion, showing how sacred texts, rituals, and spiritual institutions have been used not only to inspire belief, but to shape the course of history itself. Faith, the narrator explains, has always been a tool of influence, and prophecy, its most powerful instrument. We begin with the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt, where priesthoods maintained control through prophetic interpretation. In Babylon, priests observed the stars, planets, and lunar cycles, claiming divine insight into the destinies of kings and nations. Their predictions determined the timing of wars, agricultural cycles, and political decisions. Similarly, in Egypt, temples functioned as centers of both spiritual and temporal power. Pharaohs relied on oracles to legitimize their rule, often linking their actions to predicted celestial events. Prophecy provided not only guidance but authority, creating an unbroken chain between divine will and earthly governance. The narrator's tone deepens. Prophecy was a bridge between the seen and unseen, between rulers and subjects, between belief and action. It was the invisible hand guiding civilization. The story moves forward to the Hebrew prophets of the Old Testament. Figures such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Daniel interpreted events as both divine punishment and promise. Their messages were delivered to kings and commoners alike, often influencing political decisions. For example, prophecies about Jerusalem's fate guided diplomatic strategies, military planning, and social reform. Even when ignored, these prophetic declarations created narratives that shaped collective belief, often fulfilling themselves through human action. The documentary then examines early Christianity. The spread of the faith was fueled in part by the promise of prophecy. Visions of salvation, apocalypse, and divine justice inspired millions. Church leaders interpreted signs and miracles to consolidate power, guide conversions, and unify populations under a single moral and spiritual framework. The ability to predict or claim insight into God's will provided both legitimacy and influence, ensuring obedience and devotion. Moving into medieval Europe, the narrator details the rise of monastic orders and the Inquisition. Monks preserved sacred texts and esoteric knowledge, including prophetic writings. Meanwhile, the Church carefully curated which prophecies were widely known, often suppressing those that challenged its authority. The ability to control prophetic knowledge was, in itself, a form of power. Kings and popes used this control to manipulate perception, justify wars, and maintain dominance over populations who believed that the future had already been written by divine decree. The section highlights the role of prophecy in Islam. Prophetic traditions, known as hadith, alongside interpretations of the Quran, influenced rulers and empires. From the Abbasid Caliphate to the Ottoman Empire, political leaders consulted scholars to ensure that decisions aligned with interpretations of divine will. Prophetic insight guided military campaigns, trade decisions, and succession, reflecting a pattern similar to that in Christian Europe, the merging of belief and strategy. The narrator then turns to a fascinating and lesser-known topic, apocalyptic prophecy. Throughout history, doomsday predictions have served as instruments of control. From the European millennial fears of 1000 AD to modern end-of-days speculations, prophecies of apocalypse have influenced behavior, legislation, and social movements. Leaders who wielded such predictions could inspire obedience, create fear, or redirect societal energy toward particular agendas. Prophecy, in this sense, functioned as a psychological lever, shaping the actions of entire populations. We then examine the Reformation and Counter-Reformation, where competing interpretations of prophecy fueled political and religious upheaval. Martin Luther and other reformers invoked prophecy to challenge papal authority, while the Catholic Church responded with its own sanctioned interpretations. Both sides understood the power of prophetic narrative, not merely as spiritual insight, but as a means to control belief, mobilize followers, and justify political actions. The manipulation of prophecy became a battleground in itself. The documentary moves into the modern era, showing how prophecy and religion continue to intersect with global power structures. Fundamentalist movements, political theocracies, and even secular governments exploit apocalyptic narratives to motivate populations, justify policy, and predict or shape outcomes. Modern communications amplify these effects, creating the illusion of inevitable fate while subtly steering collective behavior. Algorithms, media networks, and religious propaganda function as new forms of prophetic instruments, merging the ancient with the contemporary. The narrator emphasizes a chilling principle. Faith is the vessel. Prophecy is the rudder. Those who steer can guide entire civilizations without ever raising a sword. The documentary illustrates this with examples of conflicts, political revolutions, and social movements that have been influenced, directly or indirectly, by prophetic interpretation. The section concludes by reflecting on the human need for certainty and meaning. Prophecy, intertwined with religion, offers both. Yet, the narrator warns, belief in fate can liberate the spirit or bind it. Throughout history, the hands that control prophecy also guided the course of humanity, and those hands are rarely empty. The camera slowly pans over illuminated manuscripts, ancient mosques, European cathedrals, and sacred temples, uniting faiths across time and space. The final words echo softly, leaving a sense of awe and unease. Every empire, every revolution, every act of devotion, all shaped in part by the invisible hand of prophecy. A city skyline glows under the cover of night. Neon lights pulse like veins of energy, and traffic flows like a river of electricity. The narrator's voice, calm yet conspiratorial, begins, "History is not a series of accidents. It is a narrative guided by invisible hands." And while kings, emperors, and priests once held the levers of destiny, today those levers are in new hands, still hidden, still powerful, still shaping the world we inhabit. This section examines the modern implications of prophecy, secret knowledge, and elite influence, showing how centuries-old principles of control, timing, and manipulation have evolved in contemporary society. It investigates the subtle mechanisms by which global events are orchestrated and how belief, perception, and narrative continue to serve as tools of power. We begin with financial systems. Global banking networks, central banks, and multinational corporations operate according to precise cycles, often unknown to the public. Analysts and economists observe patterns that echo ancient prophetic cycles, predicting recessions, booms, and crises. Some researchers suggest that elite families and secretive institutions, those with long-term access to capital and intelligence, use these insights to time events strategically. Financial upheavals, then, are not purely economic accidents, but orchestrated opportunities to consolidate power and influence outcomes on a global scale. The narrator emphasizes, money is more than currency. It is leverage, influence, and a method of shaping reality. Those who control capital can influence nations without firing a single shot. Next, the documentary explores geopolitics. Modern superpowers frequently manipulate public perception to achieve strategic goals. Wars, diplomatic initiatives, and covert operations are timed and framed in ways that echo the use of prophecy in the past. For instance, narratives of inevitability, the idea that a regime will fall, a revolution will succeed, or a crisis is unavoidable, are often disseminated before events occur, influencing the behavior of populations and governments alike. In this sense, prophecy has evolved from scripture and astrology into media, data, and strategic messaging. The narrative shifts to technological oversight. Algorithms, artificial intelligence, and predictive analytics now allow elites to model human behavior, with extraordinary precision. From social media trends to consumer behavior, every action can be forecast, nudged, or manipulated. The same principles that guided astrologers, prophets, and secret societies are now applied with mathematical rigor. Predictive models function as modern instruments of influence, subtly shaping opinions, elections, and markets, a form of digital prophecy executed in real time. The section examines elite networks. Organizations like the Bilderberg Group, the World Economic Forum, and other transnational councils bring together political leaders, financiers, and technocrats in closed-door meetings. While publicly framed as discussion forums, these gatherings allow influential individuals to coordinate actions across nations. Decisions made within these networks ripple outward, shaping policy, economy, and society according to carefully considered strategies. To the average observer, events appear spontaneous. To insiders, they are part of a continuum of control that stretches back centuries. The narrator continues, control is no longer overt. It is subtle, systemic, and psychological. The masses rarely see the strings, but the dance proceeds exactly as choreographed. We then explore information warfare and media influence. News cycles, viral campaigns, and disinformation efforts are carefully designed to manipulate perception. Public belief remains a crucial tool. If populations perceive inevitability, whether in elections, conflicts, or economic shifts, they often act in ways that fulfill these predictions. Modern propaganda functions as both mirror and engine of prophecy, amplifying its effects in a highly connected world. The documentary highlights culture and symbolism. Pop culture, art, and literature often contain coded messages reflecting elite narratives or cautionary allegories about power and destiny. Major films, novels, and music sometimes reflect archetypal patterns that resonate with the human psyche, guiding thought and reinforcing collective behavior. From historical cycles to modern myths, culture continues to serve as a vessel for shaping perception. A critical point emerges. Prophecy, influence, and control have not disappeared. They have merely adapted. Ancient tools, astrology, secret calendars, religious narrative, have transformed into global finance, media algorithms, and predictive analytics. The same principle applies. Knowledge of cycles, patterns, and human behavior grants immense power over the future. Those who understand these dynamics wield influence not by force alone, but by shaping belief, expectation, and perception. The narrator reflects on the psychological dimension. Humanity's most predictable trait is its belief in inevitability. Whether in kings, generals, or modern citizens, this belief can be guided. And those who guide it can shape the destiny of nations, economies, and civilizations. The section concludes with a sobering thought. Images of bustling cities, corporate headquarters, parliaments, and digital networks flash across the screen. The narrator's voice lowers to a whisper. Centuries of prophecy, secret knowledge, and careful orchestration converge today in a world that believes itself free. But freedom is perception. And perception is a canvas painted by those who know the cycles, the patterns, and the rhythm of history. The question remains, who holds the brush? The camera slowly pans over a globe bathed in shadow, faint lines connecting continents like veins, symbolizing the hidden networks that continue to shape events. The final echo lingers. The invisible hand that guided kings still moves. It is a simply changed form, faster, subtler, and more pervasive than ever before. The first light of dawn creeps over the horizon, spilling gold and crimson across an ancient city's rooftops. Shadows of centuries stretch long over cobblestone streets and crumbling monuments. The narrator's voice begins, calm but compelling. For millennia, humanity has believed in destiny, fate, and divine providence. Kings, emperors, popes, and prophets all claim to act on higher orders. But what if destiny itself has always been a stage, and the actors, the true architects of history, have remained hidden in plain sight? This section serves as the climax of the documentary, synthesizing all prior threads into a sweeping revelation. The intricate network of hidden powers that have shaped history, manipulating faith, prophecy, warfare, and social order for centuries. It explores the continuity of influence from ancient civilizations to modern global systems, connecting secret knowledge, elite orchestration, and symbolic power into a coherent narrative that exposes the invisible hands guiding humanity. The story begins with ancient civilizations, where the foundation of hidden influence first took root. In Mesopotamia, Babylonian priests meticulously charted celestial events, interpreting the stars and planets as signs of divine will. These insights were not mere spiritual guidance. They were a form of strategy. Kings consulted astrologers before making crucial decisions, from timing military campaigns to choosing the most auspicious moments for political ceremonies. In Egypt, pharaohs relied on oracles and priestly advisors who interpreted cosmic signs, ensuring that every public act, coronation, festival, or conquest aligned with sacred timing. These early custodians of knowledge understood a principle that would echo across millennia: that control of perception and belief equates to control of reality itself. The narrator emphasizes, history is more than a record of events. It is a tapestry woven over invisible threads. Those who held the threads controlled the pattern, long before armies marched or empires rose. Moving into classical antiquity, we see similar patterns in Greece, Rome, and Persia. Greek oracles at Delphi provided counsel to generals and statesmen, often framing political decisions as fulfillment of divine prophecy. The Sibylline books of Rome served a comparable function, guiding emperors in matters of war, religion, and public policy. In Persia, Zoroastrian priests monitored celestial patterns to advise kings, interpreting omens that could legitimize rule or justify conquest. Across these civilizations, the hidden architects did not wield armies directly. They wielded knowledge and belief, shaping the trajectory of societies through the perception of divine inevitability. The documentary then focuses on medieval Europe, highlighting secret orders such as the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, and the Freemasons. These groups preserved ancient wisdom, combining spiritual insight with political strategy. Templars, ostensibly warrior monks, safeguarded knowledge from antiquity, including astronomical charts, sacred geometry, and esoteric manuscripts. Rosicrucians and Masons studied cycles, symbols, and initiation rites, embedding hidden instructions into architecture, art, and ritual. Possession of such knowledge allowed them to influence rulers subtly, guiding decisions that affected kingdoms, trade, and even religious doctrine. The narrator's voice lowers conspiratorially. Power has always worn a mask. That mask has been prophecy, symbolism, and belief. Those who read the hidden patterns could appear prophetic themselves, moving empires as if destiny itself obeyed their hand. We then examine the Renaissance and Enlightenment, periods that might appear as epics of human reason, but were deeply influenced by hidden networks of knowledge. Alchemists, astronomers, and philosophers were often secret initiates of orders that studied history's cycles, prophecies, and symbols. Their discoveries were not just scientific or philosophical. They were instruments of influence. Patronage from monarchs and elite families ensured that these ideas shaped politics, art, and public perception in ways that aligned with broader agendas. Even the seemingly random explosion of cultural and scientific innovation was guided, in part, by networks that understood timing, symbolism, and human psychology. The documentary transitions to religious prophecy, emphasizing its role as both tool and instrument. From medieval Christianity to Islamic empires, prophecy was used to consolidate power, justify wars, and influence populations. Papal bulls, sermons, and apocalyptic texts were carefully deployed to guide belief and behavior. Prophecy created a sense of inevitability. The populace acted as if the future were predetermined, while rulers used that belief to orchestrate events. Next, the focus moves to war and conflict, showing that prophecy has often been as influential as strategy. Crusades, dynastic wars, and revolutions were timed and framed according to omens, celestial alignments, and prophetic interpretations. Napoleon Bonaparte is a case study in this phenomenon. Nostradamus' quatrains were interpreted to reinforce the perception of destiny, while Napoleon cultivated his own aura of inevitability. Soldiers and citizens alike believed in his ordained rise, which magnified his influence beyond his military genius. Even modern conflicts demonstrate similar principles, where perception, narrative, and timing shape the outcome as much as strategy and force. The documentary examines artifacts and symbols that carry hidden power, from the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant to esoteric relics of Europe and Asia. These objects functioned as instruments of influence, inspiring loyalty, fear, or obedience. Possession, display, or even rumored ownership could alter political and social behavior. In the modern era, artifacts have evolved into symbols embedded in architecture, media, and culture, continuing to shape belief and perception. The narrative then explores modern implications, connecting ancient practices to contemporary power structures. Today, global finance, think tanks, secretive councils, and media networks operate using the same principles. Knowledge of cycles, patterns, and human psychology allows elites to manipulate events, perceptions, and outcomes. Algorithms and predictive analytics serve as modern instruments of prophecy, subtly shaping elections, markets, and social behavior. The invisible hand that guided kings, emperors, and popes now guides corporations, nations, and global systems. The narrator's voice intensifies. Control is no longer overt. It is subtle, systemic, and psychological. The world believes in spontaneity, but the rhythm of history is orchestrated by those who understand patterns of belief, cycles of power, and the psychology of obedience. Finally, the section ties everything together in a grand revelation. The continuum of hidden influence, stretching from ancient priesthoods to contemporary elites, demonstrates a persistent principle. Those who understand cycles, interpret prophecy, and manage perception wield disproportionate influence over humanity. History, war, religion, culture, and politics are all arenas in which this hidden architecture operates, largely invisible yet profoundly effective. The section concludes with a cinematic vision, a sweeping panorama linking ancient pyramids, medieval cathedrals, Renaissance cities, modern financial hubs, and global communication networks. The narrator's voice fades into a whisper. History is not random. It is a tapestry woven by unseen hands. From Babylon to Wall Street, from Delphi to Davos, the architects of destiny continue to guide the course of civilizations. The stage may change, the actors may differ, but the play, the grand design, endures. And while humanity believes it walks freely, it dances to a rhythm composed by those who understand the cycles, the patterns, and the hidden laws of power. As the screen fades to black, the music swells with a haunting crescendo, leaving the audience with a sense of awe, curiosity, and unease about the forces that have truly shaped history and continue to shape it today. The first light of dawn creeps over the horizon, spilling gold and crimson across an ancient city's rooftops. Shadows of centuries stretch long over cobblestone streets and crumbling monuments. The narrator's voice begins, calm but compelling. For millennia, humanity has believed in destiny, fate, and divine providence. Kings, emperors, popes, and prophets all claim to act on higher orders. But what if destiny itself has always been a stage, and the actors, the true architects of history, have remained hidden in plain sight? This section serves as the climax of the documentary, synthesizing all prior threads into a sweeping revelation. The intricate network of hidden powers that have shaped history, manipulating faith, prophecy, warfare, and social order for centuries. It explores the continuity of influence from ancient civilizations to modern global systems, connecting secret knowledge, elite orchestration, and symbolic power into a coherent narrative that exposes the invisible hands guiding humanity. The story begins with ancient civilizations, where the foundation of hidden influence first took root. In Mesopotamia, Babylonian priests meticulously charted celestial events, interpreting the stars and planets as signs of divine will. These insights were not mere spiritual guidance. They were a form of strategy. Kings consulted astrologers before making crucial decisions, from timing military campaigns to choosing the most auspicious moments for political ceremonies. In Egypt, pharaohs relied on oracles and priestly advisors who interpreted cosmic signs, ensuring that every public act, coronation, festival, or conquest aligned with sacred timing. These early custodians of knowledge understood a principle that would echo across millennia: that control of perception and belief equates to control of reality itself. The narrator emphasizes, history is more than a record of events. It is a tapestry woven over invisible threads. Those who held the threads controlled the pattern, long before armies marched or empires rose. Moving into classical antiquity, we see similar patterns in Greece, Rome, and Persia. Greek oracles at Delphi provided counsel to generals and statesmen, often framing political decisions as fulfillment of divine prophecy. The Sibylline books of Rome served a comparable function, guiding emperors in matters of war, religion, and public policy. In Persia, Zoroastrian priests monitored celestial patterns to advise kings, interpreting omens that could legitimize rule or justify conquest. Across these civilizations, the hidden architects did not wield armies directly. They wielded knowledge and belief, shaping the trajectory of societies through the perception of divine inevitability. The documentary then focuses on medieval Europe, highlighting secret orders such as the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, and the Freemasons. These groups preserved ancient wisdom, combining spiritual insight with political strategy. Templars, ostensibly warrior monks, safeguarded knowledge from antiquity, including astronomical charts, sacred geometry, and esoteric manuscripts. Rosicrucians and Masons studied cycles, symbols, and initiation rites, embedding hidden instructions into architecture, art, and ritual. Possession of such knowledge allowed them to influence rulers subtly, guiding decisions that affected kingdoms, trade, and even religious doctrine. The narrator's voice lowers conspiratorially. Power has always worn a mask. That mask has been prophecy, symbolism, and belief. Those who read the hidden patterns could appear prophetic themselves, moving empires as if destiny itself obeyed their hand. We then examine the Renaissance and Enlightenment, periods that might appear as epics of human reason, but were deeply influenced by hidden networks of knowledge. Alchemists, astronomers, and philosophers were often secret initiates of orders that studied history's cycles, prophecies, and symbols. Their discoveries were not just scientific or philosophical. They were instruments of influence. Patronage from monarchs and elite families ensured that these ideas shaped politics, art, and public perception in ways that aligned with broader agendas. Even the seemingly random explosion of cultural and scientific innovation was guided, in part, by networks that understood timing, symbolism, and human psychology. The documentary transitions to religious prophecy, emphasizing its role as both tool and instrument. From medieval Christianity to Islamic empires, prophecy was used to consolidate power, justify wars, and influence populations. Papal bulls, sermons, and apocalyptic texts were carefully deployed to guide belief and behavior. Prophecy created a sense of inevitability. The populace acted as if the future were predetermined, while rulers used that belief to orchestrate events. Next, the focus moves to war and conflict, showing that prophecy has often been as influential as strategy. Crusades, dynastic wars, and revolutions were timed and framed according to omens, celestial alignments, and prophetic interpretations. Napoleon Bonaparte is a case study in this phenomenon. Nostradamus' quatrains were interpreted to reinforce the perception of destiny, while Napoleon cultivated his own aura of inevitability. Soldiers and citizens alike believed in his ordained rise, which magnified his influence beyond his military genius. Even modern conflicts demonstrate similar principles, where perception, narrative, and timing shape the outcome as much as strategy and force. The documentary examines artifacts and symbols that carry hidden power, from the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant to esoteric relics of Europe and Asia. These objects functioned as instruments of influence, inspiring loyalty, fear, or obedience. Possession, display, or even rumored ownership could alter political and social behavior. In the modern era, artifacts have evolved into symbols embedded in architecture, media, and culture, continuing to shape belief and perception. The narrative then explores modern implications, connecting ancient practices to contemporary power structures. Today, global finance, think tanks, secretive councils, and media networks operate using the same principles. Knowledge of cycles, patterns, and human psychology allows elites to manipulate events, perceptions, and outcomes. Algorithms and predictive analytics serve as modern instruments of prophecy, subtly shaping elections, markets, and social behavior. The invisible hand that guided kings, emperors, and popes now guides corporations, nations, and global systems. The narrator's voice intensifies. Control is no longer overt. It is subtle, systemic, and psychological. The world believes in spontaneity, but the rhythm of history is orchestrated by those who understand patterns of belief, cycles of power, and the psychology of obedience. Finally, the section ties everything together in a grand revelation. The continuum of hidden influence, stretching from ancient priesthoods to contemporary elites, demonstrates a persistent principle. Those who understand cycles, interpret prophecy, and manage perception wield disproportionate influence over humanity. History, war, religion, culture, and politics are all arenas in which this hidden architecture operates, largely invisible yet profoundly effective. The section concludes with a cinematic vision, a sweeping panorama linking ancient pyramids, medieval cathedrals, Renaissance cities, modern financial hubs, and global communication networks. The narrator's voice fades into a whisper. History is not random. It is a tapestry woven by unseen hands. From Babylon to Wall Street, from Delphi to Davos, the architects of destiny continue to guide the course of civilizations. The stage may change, the actors may differ, but the play, the grand design, endures. And while humanity believes it walks freely, it dances to a rhythm composed by those who understand the cycles, the patterns, and the hidden laws of power. As the screen fades to black, the music swells with a haunting crescendo, leaving the audience with a sense of awe, curiosity, and unease about the forces that have truly shaped history and continue to shape it today.